Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm Alex Chisnell from the Festival of Enterprise. I'm joined by Lord Bilimoria here, as you can see. Thank you all for joining us. Hope you're all staying safe and well. Hopeful there's some light at the end of the tunnel when we see the likes of Italy, Germany, Austria, Spain even making small changes with regards to the economy, opening it up, social distancing, etc. So I know we've got loads and loads of questions already flying in. So do keep them coming and I will filter them through to Lord Bilimoria once he said a few words to introduce things. But first of all, Lord Bilimoria, how have yourself and your family been coping last couple of weeks and the business?
Thank you, Alex, and great to be with all of you and to share some of what I've been going through. As you know, I'm the founder and chairman of Cobra Beer and also vice president of the CBI of the Confederation of British Industry. So been really working flat out from the house for the last weeks. In fact, since the 15th of March, when I fell ill, and I know for sure that I had coronavirus. I've managed to get that confirmed, and I have the antibodies. Of course, we don't know whether that will definitely give me immunity or not, but supposedly it does. And it's been a tough time for everybody, and it's now over a month since we've been in lockdown, and the whole country's come together. We have seen that on the whole, the lockdown has been working very, very well. But there's a big but to it. It is now time where people are saying, can we look forward? Can we look beyond? What is going to happen? What is the exit? So if I just quickly summarize some of the issues. To start off with, we have to give credit to the government that they have been fantastic when it's come to straight off the bat, middle of March, with the Chancellor, with measures. And these measures have been pretty extraordinary by any standards. If you look at it as a percentage of GDP compared with other countries, we are right up there in terms of the help that the government is giving to business. They keep saying, the government says, we will do whatever it takes. And they also say, we cannot save every business. So they're being frank on that. And on the other hand, they have been listening and iterating throughout. And I know this from the CBI, that every day there are companies and business saying, but we're not covered and we need help, and they are listening. So let me just run through a few of the basics. At the big end, the big company loans, the CCFs for the investment grade companies, that is working. Over 10 billion pounds now of those loans have been taken up, but that's just under 400 companies, the 400 biggest companies in this country who are eligible for those investment grade loans. The squeeze middle were left out, they're now there. So you've got companies with turnovers above 45 million that can get access to the CBILS, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme loans, up to 25 million pounds and 50 million pounds of a turnover up to 500 million pounds. But then that still now leaves another squeeze middle of the companies with a turnover over 500 million pounds, the companies like Tata Steel that says, well, 50 million pounds, that's not going to help us at all. We need 500 million pounds. Or the big airlines that need billions or hundreds of millions to save them out. So you've got those companies that now need the help as well. The most important one from an entrepreneur's, SME, small and medium-sized enterprise companies' point of view are the CBILS under 45 million turnover loans. And those have now been available for over a month, but sadly, very little take-up in terms of actual loans being granted. Over 300,000 inquiries, 30,000, I'm using approximate numbers, applications, but we've had 12,000 loans taken up with 2.8, maybe it's 16,000 now, the latest figure of 2.8 billion pounds worth of loans given out. Now the government says 330 billion pounds of loans available to business. At the top end, you've got about 10 billion. You've got some of the squeeze middle taking up, but the vast majority of the 330 billion pound figure that was announced over a month ago, hardly any of it has been taken up. And in other countries, such as Switzerland, Germany, these loans have been flowing through within days. Germany has now got 500,000 euros, 100% guaranteed by the government for loans up to 500,000 euros. Switzerland has a similar in Swiss francs, 100% guaranteed by their government. The difference with the Swiss one is you make a declaration, very simple form, 6 declarations. If you lie, if you mislead, if you declare falsely, you're in jail. So you make those declarations, you get the loan within hours. I know of instances of 12 hours, but they will guarantee you get the loan within 48 hours. Again, lots of money has flowed through in their system. Now, I've been recommending, and the CBI put out a release last week, that we are recommending, as are many others, that the government should guarantee 100% up to £500,000. And that £500,000 limit is because of the EU state aid rules. You earlier could not guarantee, a government couldn't guarantee a loan 100%. And now the EU has said up to 800,000 euros, the government can guarantee 100%. So the buffer between the £500,000 and the 800,000 euros is if a company is getting other forms of state aid, such as the rates relief for a year, or if a company is getting a grant, the £25,000 grant or the £10,000 grant. That's what we're recommending. That's £500,000, 100% guaranteed by the government. And I think that will really help the loans to flow through. And the businesses need those loans now. So you can have the job retention scheme. That's gone live last week. There's been a take up on that. Millions of people are now on the job retention scheme. There's a self-employed version that people will have access to, will get paid in June, hopefully earlier. But they're the creditors to pay. There's the rent. There's a rent. Perhaps delay of 3 months, but there's still the rent to pay. The cash flow requirements for a business. Many businesses already run out of cash. So they need these loans and they need the money now. And I hope the government is listening. I hope there's some good news that even at the smaller end, the £25,000 loans and below will be 100% guaranteed to start off with. But I think the government needs to act on this quickly for the sake of all business. Different sectors are being affected in different ways. What I can say, with a few exceptions, everyone is being affected by this. In my business, Cobra Beer, over two-thirds of our sales are through the restaurants. Restaurants are our foundation. It is thanks to the Indian restaurants, the curry restaurants, Cobra Beer is where it is today. We supply over 6,000 restaurants now, including the curry and Indian restaurants, the South Asian restaurants. We also supply Turkish, Lebanese, Thai, Chinese, gastropubs, pubs, bars. That whole sector is closed. Our sales are 100% down. That's it. No sales in that area. The only sales we have are through the supermarkets, and that through one SKU because we cannot produce to our full capacity at our breweries at the moment. So it is down to one SKU, but those off-trade sales are going very well, and the supply chain is working extremely well there. But what about our hospitality industry? They're absolutely on their knees. They're saying, what happens when we open up? Are we going to be open up fully? Is there going to be social distancing? If we're going to have to spread our tables in a restaurant, so you can only have half the number of tables you normally do, a lot of restaurants are saying, well, I can't, it's not worth opening, because restaurants quite often will rely on just Thursday, Friday, Saturday, busiest nights. Packing the restaurants on those 3 nights will be the mainstay of their business for a whole week. And if you can't fill your restaurant and you're only able to fill 50% of your restaurant, how will you survive? The rents, they're asking now the hospitality industry for a 9-month rent holiday. But then where does this end? Insurance, very few of the insurance policies are actually paying out. Less than 10% of the insurance policies, given the current circumstances, will actually pay out. So the businesses will need to survive not only this period of shutdown, but will need to survive after the shutdown. And now it comes to what will happen, how will this end? And this is related very much to the health scenario. So I do think before we open up questions, we are looking at it from a business point of view, but the health has to come first. And I spoke in my first virtual debate in the House of Lords. The House of Lords, unlike the House of Commons, is not sitting on a hybrid basis. It is sitting purely virtually. So last week I spoke on my first, like I'm speaking to you now, virtual debate in the House of Lords. And it was actually excellent. It was on the care sector. Until a week before last, the care sector was, quite frankly, not even being referred to. The deaths in the care sector weren't even being recorded. These sad deaths that are taking place, over 20,000 that we know in hospitals alone, every one of them a tragedy. Every one of them, our thoughts go out to the families, to the loved ones, to the friends. And yet in the care homes, we know the head of the WHO Europe last week said that over 50% of the deaths in Europe are in care homes. And we weren't even counting them. Now it's come to light that the 1 million people in our care sector, 500,000 of them in care homes, 500,000 of them in their own homes, being looked after by 1.6 million people who work in the social care sector, who visit people in their homes, who work in their care homes. There were stories of them going from the care home into hospital, going back from the hospital into the care homes without even being tested. For PPE equipment, hardly any for the care home sector. Now it's become a priority. And please remember, it's a department of NHS and social care. So they're just as much our heroes as the NHS that we all respect and admire. So now that's getting the attention. But we now sadly know that if we include the care home deaths, it's probably, the FT has extrapolated it to be double. So it's probably, and if it's the European average, the 20,000 is actually 40,000 right now. So this is a very sad time. This is why we need to take the health very, very seriously. We cannot do anything until we're absolutely confident that this curve keeps going down. And we're told we've reached the peak. Some say we've reached the peak on the 8th of April when it comes to the deaths. But we've got to see them going down. We've got to see the R figure down well below 1. In fact, ideally, it needs to be near 3.3, well below 0.5. Then you have the confidence to be able to gradually open up. And the way we open up is almost definitely going to be in a staged manner. My friend, Dr. Gerard Lyons, who was Boris Johnson's chief economic advisor when he was mayor of London, has come up with a recommendation of a traffic light system. Wales is looking to adopt that sort of system. Scotland has already said its exit strategy. Northern Ireland has said its exit strategy. We have so far said 5 pillars. Once we get to the end, and the 5th one is no second wave, and only then can we look at opening up. Well, the country is now clamoring out for, business is now clamoring out for, we need to see an exit strategy. And I think it'll be in a phased manner. I think we'll have a red phase, where hopefully as soon as the 7th of May, we'll have the opening up of things like garden centers, wholesale, larger outlets will be allowed to open up. And then that will last maybe for 3 weeks. And then after that, we'll have another phase when we can maybe open up more shops, maybe open up other types of retail outlets. People can then drive freely and roam freely, but keeping social distancing. And then the final phase, and the earliest, according to this system, could be the middle of June, is when you could see things like restaurants and pubs and bars and even public gatherings gradually start to happen. So that is one way it could. I'm obviously hoping it'll happen even before then. And then finally, before we move into the questions, I think we also need to look at what other countries have done and are doing. And it's unfair you're not always comparing like with like. Look at New Zealand, what a fantastic job they've done. Hardly any deaths, they've done so well. But they've only got 5 million people. We have over 65 million people in this country. Singapore is a city-state of 5 million people. You cannot compare it with a country like ours, which is the 6th largest economy in the world at over 65 million people. But what we can compare ourselves with are countries like Germany, which has a population bigger than ours. And their curve, if you look at it, is on a better trajectory than ours. Their business loans have been flowing out. They've been testing over 500,000 people a week. We have set a target for 100,000 by the 30th, which is this Thursday, and we're nowhere near that at the moment. And to be able to get out this with confidence, not only does the curve have to be down and the R well below 1, but we need to have the ability to have capacity in our health sector. Now, that is one where we've done brilliantly. We have now got the capacity in the health sector, whether it's in our hospitals where the intensive care units are nowhere near full. And on top of that, we built these Nightingale hospitals in collaboration with the private sector, with the National Health Service, with universities, with the armed forces and the Gurkhas working together. We now have them in London, in Birmingham, around the country, with thousands of beds extra possibly there. So if there is a second wave, we are far more prepared now with the hospital capacity. With PPE, it's been atrocious. It's been appalling. We're way behind. We've got to get up to speed and make sure there's a PPE both within the hospitals and in the care sector. And then with testing, not only does every patient in a hospital and every frontline health worker need to be tested, but every care home patient and every care home worker needs to be tested. And then the general public need to be tested. So you can have regular testing and then the contact tracing so that you can then identify people who test positive and you isolate them, people who come close to them get tested as well. If we're on top of it in that way, we can start coming out of this very quickly in a confident way and getting the economy back. And it's not a switch that's off that's going to be switched on. It'll be in a gradual way. But the more we're on top of these issues on the health side, the quicker the economy can open up. So I will leave it there for now and leave the majority of the time to have a discussion with you and take questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much indeed, Karen. I suppose the first question, funnily enough, is from Umesh Kumar, and it's probably close to my heart because we should be opening at Olympia tomorrow for the Festival of Enterprise. So he does say, where does Lord Bilimoria see the future of in-person events such as large-scale conferences and sporting events? Will we radically have to shift the future of mega events?
The answer to that is always, the first thing is, this is a temporary situation. If you look back historically with the pandemics that have taken place, going right back to the Spanish flu, that did take in 100 years ago, in 1918, 1919, that had 3 waves in it. So life could not get back to normal fully until the world had gone through those 3 waves. And that was devastating. That was over 50 million people being killed, more than the whole of the awful First World War. And other pandemics also have waves. Others, on the other hand, die out. They literally subside. They peter out. And so we don't know what will happen with this one because it's an unknown disease. Just let's keep remembering, this supposedly started in China in December. We're only in April now. We're still learning things that we don't know. I don't know if I've got immunity going forward, although I should. According to the science, according to history, according to other diseases, I have antibodies in me now because I've had the illness. The Prime Minister's had it. He should have antibodies. He should not be able to just catch it again. But we don't know. Because you're hearing the odd case of people being tested later and they've still got the disease. Now, had it not left and are you still infectious, we still don't know any of these things. When it comes to a treatment for this, is there a treatment that's going to work? We keep getting our hopes up with Remdesivir from Gilead. Big hopes, people buying into shares of that company, and then you get a report leaked from China accidentally by the WHO saying it's not working, but actually the company still says it could work. Then you've got this hydroxychloroquine. Everyone got excited about that with President Trump. Now that possibly could work, but has huge side effects. That's not approved yet. Then there are other drugs being tried at the moment that could work. If any one of those drugs proves that it can stop people dying from this disease, that will be a huge step that'll give people the confidence to go back out there, knowing that if they do fall ill, usually it's a mild form of the illness. And even if it is severe, the hospital capacity is there and there's a drug there to treat them that'll prevent them from dying. And then there's a plasma treatment. This is an age-old treatment where you take the plasma of somebody like me who's had the disease, that has antibodies in it, and use that plasma to treat somebody who's severely ill. That is showing to work. So there's promise over there as well. So I have confidence that within the few months, looking ahead, we'll come up with some drug treatments that will help. And then, of course, there's the vaccine. And with the vaccine, there is no guarantee that a vaccine will work at all. And that has been proven to be the case. There is no AIDS vaccine. The world has been working on an AIDS vaccine for over 3 decades. Malaria. People have been working on a malaria vaccine for decades. The top pharmaceutical companies in the world have been trying. They have not yet succeeded. With this, they may succeed in coming up with a vaccine. The most hopeful is the Oxford trial, which has started human trials just now, the last few days, and they are confident that human trials work. It could be ready to actually be produced in September. Now, that would be a miracle. The Imperial trial is also showing that they might be ready, but they're saying next year, and they can produce lots very, very quickly, because with 1 liter, you can produce 1 million vaccines. So I think with the actual treatments and vaccines, looking ahead. But even without that, there is a possibility of a second wave in the winter. And that's why people are hesitating to say, well, even if we can open up in the phased manner now by June, July, and you can have major events, including major sporting events and exhibitions and conferences, life is normal. That seems like a dream now that we took for granted. And now we never will ever take for granted again. But we've always got to be a little worried about the second wave. And until we're through that, we'll be slightly wary. But I do hope life can back to normal well before waiting to see if a second wave happens in November, December, in the flu season. and hopefully it peters out, because other pandemics can just peter out straight away after the first wave. So, but we have to be prepared. There may be a second wave.
Well, glad to hear that you're back to normal and you actually had it confirmed that you did have the virus a month ago now, was it? I guess
15th of, to be precise, 15th of March is when I fell ill. Yes.
Okay. And it's like with Umesh's question there, isn't it? It's a lot of it is going to be confidence, people being, going to large events like that, large scale events. Whereas if you're opening up smaller shops, etc., then people are going to get used to that far quicker. But going somewhere with potentially 60, 70, 80,000 people, it's a confidence thing, isn't it? Because somebody else here asks about department stores. Again, that's going to be more volume than your average store. Here's a good question from from Barry. Any advice you could give to SME businesses who are looking to work with the larger companies at the moment? Any advice on that? That's quite a good question.
Yes. Again, with this pandemic, it has affected the whole world. So it's not contained to any one. It's the whole world, and I mean that. There's not a country that's not excluded from this. And the whole world has gone into some form of lockdown or the other. India, 1.3 billion people, country where I was born, is in lockdown at the moment. Now, you see now in India, huge, dense in the cities. You've got cities like Bombay, Mumbai, Delhi, Calcutta, over 20 million people. And you have some of the areas, sadly, the slums, where you have 1 million people in a very condensed area. And the fear is that because you literally physically cannot separate people. You have many people living in a very small space. And the worry is will just take off. But touch wood, thank God, so far, the deaths, every one of them a sad death, is, as the last figure I looked at, less than 1,000 in a country of 1.3 billion. And India is right in the middle of its summer right now. It's boiling hot in most parts of India, over 30 degrees, many places over 40 degrees already. And it'll keep getting hotter in May until the rains start in June. So it just depends on the timing of this, of where it will, it's going to be different in different parts of the world. But the knock-on effect is everywhere. And right here, the knock-on effect is, if you take my example, so I'm Cobra Beer with Molson Coors, big global brewer, my joint venture partners. We're supplying distributors and wholesalers, who in turn are supplying restaurants. So if the restaurants are shut, the distributors get affected. The distributors get affected, we get affected. We get affected, everyone behind us in our supply chain, whether it's our packaging manufacturers, a lot of them are SMEs who supply us, they get affected. And this is where I think it's a responsibility of the bigger companies to be understanding and do whatever they can to help. Now, naturally, I've told you quite blatantly, over 2/3 of my sales have just come to a standstill. We're making huge losses right now as we speak. Now, we need to collect our money as well, but we know that our restaurants have got no business at all. How can they pay us? So there's a bit of understanding over here that needs to take place, where we need to, going back to actually the Queen, of working together as a community, as a country. It goes down in business. We need to be understanding and help each other and try and be as accommodating as we can, knowing that we're all suffering in this together. And I think the big companies who try and bully their suppliers, I mean, I heard of one company, I'm not going to name them, has said, well, if you want your payment, you've got to take a 20% discount on what we owe you. I'm sorry, that is not the way to operate.
No.
One example would be if my wholesaler says to a restaurant, if you've actually sold some beer that I've sold you, can you at least pay me for that? I know you've got beer that you bought from me that's sitting there unsold. If it's draft beer, it's going bad in its kegs in your restaurant. And I perfectly understand about that. And we'll also have to, there's a way of claiming all the way back. But you've got to be understanding. And I think the bullying attitude of big companies, this is when people will remember how you behave as a business, and your employees will remember how you treat them at a time like this, because the test of leadership is in the bad times, not in the good times.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And again, not naming any names, but you've seen a few stories in the press about bigger companies, shall we say, refusing to pay the smaller companies. And I think you're right. It's how you come out of this, and how your staff and the customers perceive you as well. We'll tell a story once everybody's fully open as well. So I didn't realize that was that large a proportion of your business affected as well. So this is a relevant question. You might be able to relate it to yours as well with regards to which one was it? Sam saying, how aggressive do you think businesses that are not able to trade or not trade fully should be getting their outgoings down or close to zero?
This is where you've got to be absolutely practical in that. What can you as a business afford to cut? And also looking ahead, but this is temporary. So whether it's in June or whether it's in some businesses, maybe as close as in 10 days time, you can start to open up. If you take the example of a restaurant can do takeaways. They're allowed to do takeaways. And the ones who are doing takeaways are, some of them, doing very good business. And it's nowhere near having your restaurant open. But if you can afford to just keep a small number of staff on to make the food, to prepare those takeaways, it's not only bringing in you some revenue, but it's keeping your business ticking. So that when we're given the green light, the restaurant can actually bring customers in, you can hit the ground running. On the other hand, if your business is closed completely and not doing takeaways, when you can start opening your doors, it's going to take you that much longer to actually get started again. But keep looking ahead to when you're going to be able to get started. If you can phase things, all the better. The furlough scheme is I think, very, very good. It's a bit rigid, that you've got to be furloughed for a minimum of 3 weeks, but you can bring people back. You can bring people back for a day or 1 week or 2 weeks and put them on furlough again. And the government again has listened. At the CBI, we were very, very conscious that it was only up to the end of May. And then the government listened and we said, look, a lot of companies will give 45 days notice if they know it's going to be at the end of May, in the middle of April. The government listened to us, have extended the furlough till the end of June. They're not going to be able to extend it indefinitely.
No.
The time's going to come when you're going to have to be able to operate. When you operate, all the delays in your payments that you've made, that you've been given, you're going to have to pay them at some stage. So you want to make whatever cuts you can now, but also keeping in mind you don't want to let go of people. You want to retain people to be able to operate again once you start.
Yeah, and I think I've made this point on a previous webinar with Magnus Grimmeland, who runs an early stage VC for startup companies. They've got like 8 global locations, and he was saying, it's so key to try and retain your workforce, because most CEOs and founders, it's the hardest thing to do is not only recruit people, it's to actually retain them. So to let those staff go, to then have to start that process again, is just tough, isn't it? So I think that's really sound advice there. Interesting question, Javier. Does Karen think the pandemic will spark a race to the bottom when it comes to pricing B2B contracts and services? That is a danger, isn't it?
I don't think so, because again, one's got to be absolutely realistic in this, in that we're all competing always in normal circumstances. And if you're a company that builds, I do believe that any company, B2B or B2C, your brand is very important. And if you build a strong brand, you know that if it's a value for money brand, you've got to offer your service at value for money, your product at value for money, but you've still got to make a profit. And if you're going to go race to the bottom, even the most value for money brand will not survive if it does not have a sensible level. And this is where I think it's very important that you follow the basics of business. I have my 10 P's of building a business applies to any business. You've got to have a good product, and you've got to have that product at the right price. Now that price has to be appropriate. Now Cobra is a super premium product, so it's expensive. It's the more expensive product on the shelves or in the restaurant because it's a super premium product. But you can have a value for money product that has to be at a value for money price appropriately. It's got to be place. You've got to have that product available, and you've got to have the distribution. Now you're only going to have the distribution if people in that distribution chain make their margins. So if you're going to go down and try and cut, that's a road to nowhere. And the fourth is you've got to promote your business. And that's advertising, marketing, point of sale, public relations, all the marketing that companies do. Those are your 4 P's of marketing if you studied marketing. My extra P's, the 5th, is people. The most important thing is people. At any time, a time like this, in the good times, people are the most important thing, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're a service business or a B2B business. The next thing is finance, spelled PH. You can't do anything without the money. And this is a time when you're looking ahead when it comes to finance, trying to get every form of finance you can to cope with looking ahead with the uncertainty and that uncertainty and anxiety that we all feel at the moment. It's a finance. The next thing is passion. Don't do what you're doing unless you're passionate about it. And if you're passionate about your business, you will survive this horrible time because you believe in your business, you believe in your product, and you know that your customers will want your product afterwards, and you have that passion and you love what you're doing. And the next thing is principles. You only do things, and especially at a time like this, it really tests it, that it's better to fail doing the right thing than to succeed doing the wrong thing. Not to take those shortcuts, to take the long-term view. And finally, profit. You've got to make a profit. So if you're going to go down that vortex and that downward spiral of cost cutting, you're not going to be able to make those profits. And you've got to look ahead to make those profits.
Very good points. Trevor says, any thoughts on the airline situation? And I'm not referring to any high profile ones in particular, just interested to know your thoughts on the sector as a whole.
This is the sector that is, like the hospitality sector, which the hospitality sector employs 5 million people in this country. We're in a dire situation. Airlines, similarly, are literally, physically grounded. Now, one airline has said they're going to start some flights. I think it's Wizz Air that's going to start some flights now. But the big airlines, and this is where, because it's a global pandemic, it's all linked to what's happening around the world. If countries are opening up around the world, if the pandemic starts to subside, then countries will start opening up their borders. Now, we might get the situation where we will have to have checks. So we have to have temperature checks at airports. Or you may even have a situation where testing gets to a stage where you can have saying that you've had an antigen test showing that you don't have the coronavirus within a period of, let's say, 2 weeks before you board a flight. Or in a dream scenario, you have antibody tests that are available that are valid and that you can, with a pinprick blood test, show that you have the antibodies. And if it's proven that those antibodies give you immunity and that you're not infectious, that allows you to travel freely around the world. So there are ways in which we can allow air travel even before we're sure we're through this pandemic to start again and people to resume traveling around. Then, of course, you're saying if social distancing has to be preserved, airlines are talking about leaving middle seats free. Now, airlines work on yield. You need to match. The budget airlines have been so successful because they've been fantastic at yield management. The EasyJets of this world, the Ryanairs of this world are really successful airlines, but it's down to absolute yield management. If you have to start giving up whole rows of seats, how can you be profitable without putting up your prices? And if people are already suffering because they've been through a tough time now, where are they going to be able to afford to pay the higher prices? So it's a catch-22 knock-on domino effect for the airlines. And of course, in America, they're being bailed out in a big way. And you've got the specific examples of joint ventures with an American airline that's been bailed out by America, but then wants to bail out over here as well. And it gets very, very complicated. So as a sector, the airline sector, some of them who've got investment grade have been able to access the CCF funding and get billions of pounds worth of funding. Some of them have reserves in cash. But it's a very challenging time for the airline industry. And again, it's confidence. Once we have the confidence to fly freely, then that will help as well.
Yeah, and I think I saw an article from Airbus this morning. It just the amount of new planes, of course, being produced and the huge workforces that are across a number of different countries that go to make those planes as well, just ground to a complete halt.
But again, I keep saying this, look ahead. You've read in the press about EasyJet and their big Airbus order. Why were they ordering these extra Airbuses? Because growing business. And in India, look at a country like India. The demand for travel in India, the domestic travel in India is phenomenal. It's growing really rapidly. There are really excellent budget airlines in India that enable people to fly who would never go near a plane or near an airport. It's just tremendous how well connected a country like India is, and it's only going to increase. when we're through this pandemic, that is only going to increase, not going to stop. The planes are going to be traveling full again. So we've got to look ahead to that time and get through this phase, and for the airlines to survive through, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, whatever time it takes, they need to just survive to get through, because we are going to need them in the future.
We are. And a question from Paul with regards to property. When does Karen think the commercial property rental market will begin to drop? The big brand names have asked and received reductions in the rent. What can SMEs do to gain reductions so that it will help them survive this year?
With rents, the government's been pretty clear. They've said that a landlord cannot evict a tenant for 3 months. And that applies, my understanding, both residential and commercial. And I've already mentioned earlier, from a commercial point of view, the restaurants are saying that's not enough for us. We need 9 months to see us through, particularly if restaurants are not going to be allowed to open up fully and are going to be the last things to be opened up. I mean, there was one scare story which was on the front page of one of the tabloids that said restaurants and pubs are not going to open until December. Now, I really, really don't believe that's going to be the case, but it is a possibility. So how are restaurants going to survive for the next 9 months if they can't open up properly? And I've said earlier, they can't even survive if they could open 50%. So that is a serious challenge. And how much you give in terms of grants or rates relief, which is all very helpful from the government, as I've said before, this is where the loans come in. And this is where it's really important that the CBILS loans, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, are easily accessible to the businesses. The under 45 million loans are interest-free for the first year. We're even asking for some of the loans to be extended from 6 years to 10 years. So you have a long time to pay them off and to see you through this time, including to help you pay your rent and your other creditors and your working capital. And please remember, it's also unfair if a landlord, not every landlord is renting you a restaurant or a retail outlet because they own that property outright and they're just sitting on cash. Most of them are actually borrowing to buy that property to rent it to you. So they have to make their mortgage payments, interest payments as well. And so that's where the knock-on effect comes. So if the government says, 9-month rent holiday for the retail outlets and restaurants, then they've got to support the landlords in some way for them to be able to do that. So there's a domino effect that keeps going back that we have to always keep in mind.
Here's a question you like. Cobra is such a critical brand for lockdown curry houses. When does he think we'll be drinking it again with a curry?
Well, I tell you something. I can't wait. I'm dreaming of the day that I can go into an Indian restaurant, a curry restaurant, Bangladeshi restaurant, Sri Lankan restaurant, Pakistani restaurant, Nepalese restaurant, South Asian restaurant, and just eat delicious, delicious curry accompanied by a smooth, extra smooth Cobra. I dream of it. At the moment, we've got to make do with it at home.
Indeed.
So order a takeaway from any fantastic South Asian curry restaurant and have a Cobra at home, which you could buy from any of the supermarkets for the time being. But I'm hoping it'll be sooner rather than later that we'll be able to do that, to be in a restaurant and life being normal. Now, in the meantime, we're going to be working. I'll be announcing this formally later, but people are doing wonderful charitable work. So many of our restaurants, our curry restaurants, this is with no one prompting them doing it. They're doing this on their own accord, preparing hundreds of meals and delivering them personally to their local hospitals for the doctors and the nurses and the healthcare workers. I think that is just fantastic. And hundreds of restaurants are doing this off their own bat, absolutely free, when they themselves are suffering. This is the spirit. When they themselves are suffering and are losing money and are not allowed to let customers in, they're doing good work, putting back into their communities. That is the spirit that should inspire all of us. And we're going to do a big charitable event with Prince Charles as the Prince of Wales charity, the British Asian Trust, which does amazing work raising money for work in South Asia, in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. And we're going to be doing I can't say much more, but a big curry week where people are encouraged to have curry at home and to, in that way, donate money to help with the COVID-19 pandemic through the South Asian restaurants for South Asia.
Excellent. It's funny, we've got in the street where I live in Poole here, we've got a WhatsApp group, and it started when we had the last royal wedding, like however many years ago that was. And somebody posted up, I think it was on Friday night, a picture of our local curry house called the Gate of India, and someone posted up going, they started deliveries everywhere. You was like that, brilliant. Okay, let's order a curry. You're getting all the big industries here. Here's a question from Eileen. How can the private and public sector work better together to revive the high street?
That's a really good question. And I make this point regularly, that in the UK, we have the public sector employs, rough figures, 15%. 85% of our employment is through the private sector. I'm talking the UK as a whole. Certain regions it's more public sector and less private, but where we're concerned, 85%. And we are so codependent on each other. And the bottom line of this equation is that the private sector, we create the businesses that create the jobs, that pay the taxes, that pay for the public services that we all benefit from. So it's a mutual coexistence that we work together. Now, we often take this completely for granted, but this equation is phenomenal. And now we're seeing right now how important it is. And we see how important it is and how bad it is when we work in isolation. So one of the reasons, for example, I believe that the testing has not taken place as rapidly as it should have in this country is because it was totally public sector controlled. It's only when after a big clamor, and I was one of those voices right up early on, crying out for more testing, and then this voice grew louder and louder. And then the government said, enough now, we're not going to just keep this in the hands of Public Health England. We're now going to open this up to private laboratories, to universities, to the pharmaceutical companies, all working together to escalate. And now the armed forces getting involved as well to help deliver the testing. So you work collaboratively between the private sector and the public sector, you can get things done. No better example than the Nightingale hospitals. The Excel Center one as an example, that's private sector owned in collaboration with the National Health Service, in collaboration with the Army and the Gurkhas, in collaboration with the University of East London, that exists next door, all working together, setting up a 4,000 bed hospital in 9 days with the first 500 beds up and running, ready to use. That's the power of the private sector and the public sector working together. And the more we do of that, the better it's going to be going forward.
Here's a positive question with regards to the environment, which was from, where was it? From Adam. Do you believe that the environmental benefits such as cleaner air from the lockdown will continue once restrictions are lifted? Perhaps more people have learned that they can work from home rather than commuting to an office every day.
This is often talked about. Oh, we're going to just change the way we work now. Is it all going to be done this way? The answer is hopefully absolutely not, because we are gregarious people. Human beings are gregarious. We love interacting with each other. I've seen in my 30-year business career that many, many times when you're trying to sort a deal out or sort out a problem, there's no better way than sitting down face to face with people around a table and sorting it out. There's no shortcut to that. This is great. And I think we will make more use of this. And this will help in people traveling less, being able to work more flexibly. I think this is great. Combined with face-to-face, I think that's going to be the way ahead. And when it comes to the environment, of course, come on. I mean, we all love it. Hearing the birds chirping that we don't normally hear as much. Yeah. Having cleaner air that's being measured around the world. In India, in the Punjab, which is state, you can actually see the Himalayas from the Punjab, which you could never have dreamt of a few weeks. And these sort of examples around the world. But I think looking ahead, what the worry is that we're going to be so caught up in the next months, years, catching up with the damage that's been done now, that we're going to forget the basics. And that's why the CBI, we've said that the revival, the restart, the exit is not only in a phased manner, but you can have it as 3 different compartments. So one is the restart. So you could say the Gerard Lyons' traffic light system The red, amber, green is the restart part of it. Now, whether that takes from May to June, or May to July, or how long that takes. The next thing is the revival. And the revival part is very important. This is where I think the government will have a big role to play. It's not just the help the government is giving now in the billions of pounds of support. The government will need to give much more support going ahead to help the businesses who will be short of cash, who will have had to borrow, who will be down on their knees, to make sure that businesses can really hit the ground running. And that's where the tax incentives, that's where the government help, that's where the spending on infrastructure, that's where government being bold and helping that revival, maybe even doing things like cutting VAT that has been done in the past, maybe even things like reducing national insurance, that all these measures to help businesses to power the economy ahead in that revival phase. And the final is the renewal phase. The renewal phase is when we really get back to what we were working on. For example, climate change. We're making such huge progress in areas like that, and sustainability, that we never forget that it's going to be part of this restart, revive, renew.
Yeah, I think it's adapting, isn't it? Taking the best learnings from this and implementing to what was working before, because there's clearly a lot of right that was working before as well. But this has just given us some extra learnings, which leads us nicely into Simon's questions. Thank you, Simon, for reminding me. And they've asked it once already, so I've missed that one. What advice would Karen have for small businesses wanting to grow, scale up during this period? Because there clearly are industries that are doing very well at the moment. I had a couple of people on last week in different industries who were growing at 300% compared to pre-COVID-19. So yeah, any advice you have given your years in business when it comes to looking to grow at the moment?
If you're one of those fortunate companies that is in a position at this time to still be able to operate freely, and where the demand for your product is huge, then you've just got to keep growing. I mean, I can use examples like Zoom as an example. Zoom was big, growing, huge valuations. Now it's flying, as are other similar applications. You've got Amazon is to my experience, is doing really, really well. There's nothing stopping them at this stage. The supermarkets are doing well, even with the social distancing measures. Retailers doing well. Our supermarket sales with one SKU are growing very, very well. So as long as the supply chains can be maintained, that's why it's very important that there are companies that have been continuing to produce at this time, using social distancing and still producing, which is what we're proud to be doing, putting people first and still managing to do this. And I think that must be encouraged in this restart phase. We've got to make sure that as much production takes place as possible, because that supply chain is crucial. And let's not forget the agriculture. We've got to have those harvests done that are coming up. We're flying in workers from Romania. We're used to getting 70, 80,000 agricultural workers from the EU. We need to, and those people can't travel as easily now. We've got to find ways to make sure we harvest as well. So the supply chains are absolutely crucial. The many businesses now that in the tech field in particular that can absolutely fly at this time, and that's great.
Indeed. So a few questions around the banks and people's experiences here. Ben says, do you think anything will happen to the micro businesses? Haven't touched on that yet, that operate from a residential address as commercial property is not required. We've been forgotten and all our work vanished, but no help as we don't have a small office.
You know, it's a very difficult one, because if you're a micro business, you may be entitled, but you've got the self-employed help that you can get, the equivalent of the job retention scheme of up to £2,500, 80% of your profits up to £50,000. So that's one thing you can access. You may be also entitled to the CBILS loans, and that you will be. But then things like, the hospitality industry where you get rates relief for a year, you wouldn't be entitled to anything like that. Your landlord, of course, cannot, the rent you can delay for 3 months. You can delay your taxes, whether it's your VAT return or with HMRC, you can delay any taxes. If it's a self-assessment, your July amount you do not have to pay, you pay it in January. So there are lots of measures that even are there to help you although you may not be entitled to, say, a grant of £10,000 or £25,000 that a retail hospitality outlet is entitled to. But there is still help for you.
Thank you. And yeah, last couple of questions for you as we're coming up to the hour now, Karen. What's your priority for yourself and your business over the next month, would you say? What are you focusing on now?
We are very, very focused on looking ahead. And I hold webinars with the restaurant industry every week, having a session like this with the restaurant industry, but more specific to our industry, dealing with question answers with their specific issues and problems. And they are suffering hugely. So we're trying to support our industry as much as we can. We've got this event that I've told you about that's coming up to raise money for charity, encouraging the restaurants to do takeaways and helping them. We'll be doing that in partnership with a company like Just Eat. So people are coming together and helping out. And also it's keeping in touch with our employees, making sure they're looked after, because the welfare of your employees comes first and foremost. That's the most important thing. And when we open up, we need to hit the ground running. And that's my priority. But there's no taking away that everyone's experiencing. I think it's Her Majesty the Queen's Master of the Household, who's a tremendous individual, very impressive naval admiral, who says that he expresses, everyone's experiencing anxiety and uncertainty and a sense of dislocation. Everyone, all of us. And this is a time when one's got to be able to look ahead. And I think, I'm not sure if the last time, but I'll repeat it, that my Harvard Business School professor, John Quelch, who I also knew at the London Business School, he said, leading in the times of a crisis are 7 C's: calm, confidence, communicate, collaborate, community, compassion, and cash. And I think those 7 C's are very relevant in dealing with a crisis like this.
They are indeed. David, I remember David brought this up. Yeah, just raising concern over business vehicle lease payments and accruing debt for this period. I've seen that a few times from people. His suggestion: add 3 months to the end of the contract and do not charge whilst vehicles are parked up. Any comments on that, Lord Bilimoria?
See, this is where everyone can be flexible, where nobody is asking from a business relationship or somebody like that, say, please give me 3 months free. Just allow me a breather to get through this, and I will pay for it. I'm not going to pay for it. I'll pay for it later. And I think this is where companies, if they have the ability, can be flexible and should be flexible if they can to help out, because these are customers, not only existing customers who are going through a bad time, but these are future customers who should be repeat customers in the future. And if you've helped them now, they won't forget you and they'll come back to you rather than going to somebody else.
Absolutely. Paul hasn't put his surname down, but he says, can you pass my regards to Karen? I met him a few times when he delivered talks at our events in Oxford. So I'll just pass that on.
Thank you. And before we finish, you give me just 2 minutes. I want to just say a couple of concluding.
Yes, perfect.
But whenever that is, but I'll keep going until you tell me.
Yeah, no, I was literally just going to hand over. So that's perfect timing. Read my mind.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Thank you, Ken.
But it's been great to be with all of you, and I think we've covered a lot of ground in terms of from the health side, from the business side, from the economy, what has helped. I think also I don't want to forget the government has launched a new coronavirus business support finder tool. So do use this, the business supporter finder tool. That you can literally put in the details of your business, and it tells you what help you're entitled to. And it's a very quick way. I've tried it myself. It's very easy, and it'll tell you what help that you are eligible for as a business. The CBI has a coronavirus hub. It's free to everyone, including normally things are only for CBI members. This is for any business to use free of charge. Just look up the CBI website, the CBI coronavirus hub. It's got up-to-date information. CBI has daily webinars that again are open to all businesses, not just CBI. We've had lots of really interesting people on, along with our Director General and our Deputy Director General, our Chief Economist. So you can, through the Coronavirus Hub, you will be able to sign up to those webinars as well. So just make sure you use as much help as you can get. CBI is also offering free membership for 6 months to certain businesses, so you can even try and apply for that if you'd like to as well. There's a lot of help out there now, and all the business organizations, I know the FSB, I know the British Chamber of Commerce, the IOD, everyone is pulling weight, make UK all working together for this. And I think this afternoon, I'm hoping for some good news from the Chancellor. Now, if I may just conclude by saying this, if you put this into the context of history, we've been through horrible times before, pandemics. In the last century, you've had the First World War, Second World War, you had the huge Spanish flu pandemics. And I saw an excellent graph. I've seen this graph in different formats, but I've seen an excellent graph that shows the debt as a percentage of GDP in this country over the last century. And what this shows is the debt obviously will go up during a time of war. And in the First World War, it goes up, then it comes down, then it goes up in the Second World War. At the end of the Second World War, debt as a percentage of GDP, public debt, was over 250%. It then came down, and now we're just under 100%. So we still do have a lot of buffer there for the government to be able to help out, whether it's through quantitative easing of hundreds of billions of pounds or all the other measures it's putting in now, and in the revival stage looking ahead. I have the confidence that this economy, we've had learned lessons from the financial crisis. We're much stronger now to deal with a pandemic like this. We've got the most fantastic institutions. We've got a government that wants to help. I think that we've got the room there for the government to be able to continue to support business, to get us through, and we will get through this.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Let's focus on the positives. Obviously, a lot of people, as you alluded to earlier, coming from a place of fear, place of anxiety. And, we've all been impacted. We're meant to be opening tomorrow in London at Olympia with 4,000 people, and we're already looking forward to that. So we, massively appreciate you taking the time to come on here, because I know you've been doing a lot of these live webinars again. And you can see the comments here on the side, Simon, James, Jazz, Eileen, McWilliams, all saying thank you so much. This has been amazing. Focus on the positives in the future. Great webinar. Thanks, Lord Bilimoria, from Stephen. James, super thanks. Loads and loads of amazing comments. This will go on a replay via our website, and then we're going to uplift it and put it straight onto the YouTube channel, because quite a few people are asking, can they share this with friends in different networking groups? FSB have been superb. Enterprise Nation have been amazing. Great. And I've used the tool you said as well from the government, and it is very good. It's very super focused now that you can find the help that is out there. So keep those stories coming. Really like to hear them. Appreciate your time again. We'll let you scoot off. And thank you once again, Lord Bilimoria. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, everyone. All the very best to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you.